Caucus interviews.
Oh, so she made it clear to the caucus.
And those of us who bothered to attend those caucus meetings as well.
So she made it clear
What
to
about
20, 30 people.
Well, any of the voters who bothered coming to the caucus meetings, which were open, would have known.
So she made it clear to what, 30 people?
No, there were more of us than that.
Did she make it clear to any of the trustees?
Me?
The ones that were there?
She did not make it clear at the January meeting.
Okay.
I don't remember.
This is fixing
I
something.
specifically was there and
This
she
is
never
fixing
made it.
something that's not broken. And there's no reason to address this now. I'd be more than willing to address this at a later date if in fact it turns out to be a problem. But to address it today,
And I'd like to get it taken care of while
take
we
care
have
of
someone.
what though? What are you
I'd
taking
like to
care
have
of?
someone taking minutes who is experienced in taking minutes.
We have someone, Nancy.
No, Nancy on occasion when we didn't have someone taking minutes volunteered to help out.
And she did a good job.
I move that we call the question.
Is there a specific question?
Whether or not we should authorize the clerk to hire
An
Was that-
assistant.
an assistant.
Was the motion to do that? Was it to do that, or was it, I thought,
What was the motion?
I
What was your motion?
think we need to clarify the motion.
Okay,
because
we
the
need to
motion-
change the motion.
Wait,
then.
wait a second.
Yeah.
Is there a motion? The motion is,
Move to employ a person to take minutes.
All right, now,
And Nancy hires someone to employ someone to take minutes.
Nancy hires.
was that, I don't recall that was that what you meant in the motion, that Nancy hires someone? Because I think that we need to have, either we need to have an ordinance that establishes that authority for her to do that, if there's no authority for that to happen now, or maybe you need a resolution
Well,
authorizing the mayor to hire someone with those, at that salary range, and the mayor can do it, or I can prepare an ordinance.
If
creating a
statute,
position.
Authorizing and
if
directing
state
are two different
statute
things,
says, if state statute says that the clerk can hire an assistant
no,
clerk.
it doesn't
It
say.
doesn't say that.
Is it-
It doesn't
Bruce,
say that.
Bruce, the position
What does statute say?
exists.
Who had the
No.
statute?
The position
Statute.
exists now, and we
Jan is
just
correct.
have one person that is retiring.
Right.
Does that position have to be reestablished
But
just
the
to hire a
the
new
mayor is the
person?
one who makes the decision to hire, so the board does not have the authority to go hire employees.
Okay.
The statute, as I recall, and John, I think correctly states it, the village board by ordinance could permit the village clerk.
I don't know that it said specifically by ordinance, but it said the board could establish a position working for the clerk. That the board would
It's
have to
necessary
establish a position.
that the board, by ordinance, allow the clerk to hire. That hasn't happened.
That's the point I'm trying to make here, is that the board is not, I can't recall another episode where the board has said, we're gonna hire someone, and voted to hire someone. That's, the board authorizes salary ranges, authorizes the creation of positions, can authorize the mayor to hire, can authorize the creation, but it doesn't just go out and hire someone.
Okay, well then let's authorize the creation of a position. We've got a position, we don't need to create.
We don't need to
Well,
create it.
well,
It
well,
exists.
then it would be up to the mayor to either
To fill it or not.
to fill it or not. That's my point.
As it exists right now.
So are you saying that, so that even if we passed a resolution, can we even pass a binding resolution directing the mayor to, in fact, hire someone to fill that position?
I'm not saying that you can do that, because the mayor is the executive of the village. So you can authorize the creation of positions, but the mayor is the one who hires and fires.
Then we don't need to create because the position exists.
Okay, so right now, in the absence of there being an ordinance establishing the right of the clerk to hire someone, there really is nothing that we can even vote on.
That's what I'm trying.
It would be a perfunctory, it would basically be like an advisory resolution.
Well, it seems to me the mayor has the authority to hire individuals with the approval of the village board, both as to the individual and to the compensation, because the village board has to authorize compensation, period.
So we can authorize him to hire someone up to this dollar amount.
Exactly.
And then if he wants to hire someone, he does. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't.
Or we can request that an ordinance be passed, creating the position.
That's correct.
And if the position is then created, then is it fair to assume that the mayor would have to hire someone to fill said position?
No?
If you follow the statute, as I recall it, it is not in front of me, but it does authorize, I don't know the word is authorize, but the clerk actually can hire an assistant. The clerk's responsible, but there has to be an ordinance.
Okay?
Theoretically, an ordinance, if the mayor doesn't like it, you can veto it. It requires a two-thirds vote to veto.
I don't think we have veto power.
Pardon?
I don't think there is veto power.
Oh, yes, there
There's
is.
veto power in the mayor.
Are you kidding? Oh,
Absolutely.
yes, there is.
Okay, so is there a motion or is there not a motion? I'm still a bit confused.
That's-
Well, I-
Well, I'm gonna withdraw my prior motion, and I'm going to, how do I do this?
What do you want to do?
What do I wanna do? I want to have an ordinance written
All right.
that, enables the clerk to hire an assistant clerk.
We can certainly-
For what purpose?
To take minutes.
To authorize the clerk to hire somebody?
Well, that's what apparently, that's what I'm told the statute says.
No, I mean, that you can, we can have an ordinance that would authorize the clerk to hire an assistant if that's what the board wanted. We could prepare an ordinance and the board can vote on the ordinance.
Yeah, I don't know if what I have to say is going to help one way or the other, but I think it's funny. 24 years ago, when the caucus needed some help, and the gal across the street came and said, "Do you serve on the caucus?" What's a caucus? Yeah, okay, it'll be a couple days. So then Vern Rudder was picked as president of the caucus. He needed a secretary for the caucus. Nobody raised it. Absolutely nobody. Finally, I said, Vern, I'm a lousy typist and I don't take shorthand. He said, that's all right, honey, all I need is a warm body.
Yeah. You know, the point
And I ended up running for clerk.
the point I'm trying to make here, and I don't mean to,
So you can make it whatever you want.
I don't want to, I understand that there's a disagreement on the board, so I'm trying to offer you somewhat of a neutral view as much as I can on this. You wouldn't want to be in the position where next week the board decides that the mayor ought to have an assistant to the mayor. And the board says, you know, we want to hire someone, whether the mayor wants an assistant or not. We think you're losing a step, and you take a vote to hire an assistant. I mean, you have to remember what your functions are here. The mayor is the executive here, and the only thing I fault myself for when we were having this discussion, I really was trying not to get caught up on this thing about whether it was on the agenda or not. But if you have a disagreement about whether this is a position that's needed or not, what you're really doing is trying to make the decision about hiring and firing at a legislative level instead of an executive level. And there is a way to overcome that, which is to give someone else the authority to make the hire, if that's what the board wants to do. But just, you know, you are in that range where you're basically saying this is how we think the, you know, the structure of the department ought to be, and this is how it ought to be filled, and that's not normally something that, as a legislative body, you've done in the past, or that most legislative bodies
We
do.
haven't had this kind of a disagreement in the past.
I'm just, that's why I'm pointing it out for what it is.
Is there a motion? Did you
There's
throw
no
a
motion.
No, I just made a motion that if an ordinance be prepared allowing the clerk to hire an assistant clerk to take minutes.
Just like a second.
Hmm?
An assistant clerk or just?
Well, it says according to the state statute, it says the clerk can hire an assistant.
To take.
Well, it can hire an assistant, it doesn't say to take minutes, I said to take minutes.
So it would be to prepare an ordinance, and then the ordinance would come back, you'd have a chance to see, you know, of course you have the issue of, you know, does the clerk then have the sole authority to discipline the assistant clerk? Is the hiring and firing, I mean, is that something solely within the purview of the clerk? Are you gonna set salary by, you know, for this position in the ordinance, or are you not just gonna be part of the annual review? So there would be some things they have to draft in the ordinance, but if the sense is, if the majority of the board wants to see an ordinance at the next meeting, then I think.
We have a motion and a second.
Question.
Wait, who's second?
Who's
Second it,
Cheryl.
Question. Does this imply the authority to fire as well by the clerk?